Hey everybody, thank you for purchasing the $3 steak. This is my top 10 favorite Spongebob episodes. This list was hard to come up with because of how many episodes there are. I found so many that can still make me laugh today and still hold up. Please remember, this list is subjective, so keep it respectful in the comment section below. If your favorite episode isn't on this list, it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It just means my list is better. So let's get into it. Number 10, Squeaky Boots. Squeaky Boots is not one episode that I grew up watching that often, but looking back on it, I laughed pretty hard. Mr. Krabs being cheap, catching up to him was pretty hilarious to see, as I usually find his antics hilarious, and at the end of the episode, not only did he learn a lesson, but he also treated Pearl by buying her shoes, and he decided to even go on a vacation with her. Honestly, it's a pretty good episode. Number 9, Squidville. This episode is great. I think from start to finish, this episode is a classic that delivers. In this episode, Squidward finally moves away from SpongeBob and Patrick. About time. And for a time, he is enjoying himself. Squidward is living his best life with nobody to bother him and ruin his day. This is until he later realizes he misses them and needs a little chaos in his life. SpongeBob and Patrick go over to apologize to him, and while they did not interact at the end of the episode, nor do we get to see them apologize to Squidward, we do, however, get to see their relationship and just how much they actually really care about each other. Seeing SpongeBob and Patrick go out of their way to actually make this gesture for Squidward, rather than continue to harass him and not be aware of their actions, is refreshing to see. This is especially refreshing on Squidward's end as well, because in several episodes, we see him stick up for SpongeBob, whether it's standing up to Krabs or throwing a pizza in a customer's face. We see that deep down, he likes SpongeBob, but in this episode, we also see that he actually really cares about Patrick too. This episode is really solid, especially if a laugh is needed. Number 8, Midlife Crustacean. This episode, in my opinion, is one of the best SpongeBob episodes that just gets better as an adult. I feel this way because when I was a kid, I found it boring and just something to watch, but being older allows me to understand Mr. Krabs a bit better. While I'm not Mr. Krabs' age, I can understand not being able to relate to younger people. Shoot, even people 5 years younger than me make me feel out of touch. The part with the blinker got a nice chuckle out of me. Then after being frustrated by not being able to feel cool or young by being with SpongeBob and Patrick, Mr. Krabs finally snaps, and that was pretty funny. Getting to the controversial part of this episode, Midlife Crustacean was banned because of the panty raid scene. For those who do not know what I'm talking about, Patrick states that they're going on a panty raid. They do the panty raid, and in a funny plot twist, it was Mr. Krabs' mother whose panties they raided. Don't get me wrong, I get why they banned this episode, but this show has shown so much worse that deserves to be banned, like the splinter, or the scene with Squidward's toe, or Sandy's fur. I really don't think this is that bad compared to the other stuff that we've seen. Number 7, SpongeBob BC. When I was a kid, I used to pop this episode in my VCR and play it all day. Watching it back years later, I was not disappointed. The fact that this episode could be so good without having any actual dialogue and just utter gibberish shows why SpongeBob was such a powerhouse back then. Comedically, it is on point with such a basic plot. They managed to make it memorable. That's impressive to me given the modern episodes have so many interesting plots with potential that they completely squander. Number 6, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, the first installment. This is timeless SpongeBob. Seeing him bother his heroes yet still have good intentions is honestly one of the best versions of SpongeBob. I think the way he aggravates Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, only to lead to them coming out of retirement to throw SpongeBob and Patrick out of the retirement home, was a pretty good resolution, and adding all the other retirement residents as the sea creatures was a nice touch. Number 5, Dunces and Dragons. Dunces, Dragons, and musical numbers. Oh my! Just kidding, I hate musicals. But I do not hate the songs in this episode, and I love the medieval setting. It's just fun to see the characters' counterparts. Number 4, Krusty Towers. Time to get into one of my favorite Season 4 episodes. After Mr. Krabs opens a hotel and has this policy being used at Squidward's expense, Squidward channels his inner 50 Cent and plays a 50 Cent level petty move by quitting and checking in at the Krusty Hotel. Seeing him heckle Mr. Krabs and stick it back to him was pretty refreshing, and not to mention that this is a rare episode where Squidward actually wins one. Even if in the end the hotel crashes down and all of them end up in a hospital, still refreshing to see. Number 3, Club Spongebob. Club Spongebob made me laugh plentifully, and while the pacing is somewhat slower than my average favorite SpongeBob episode, I think that it really takes its time, and I think for the plot, it works with the slower pace. And in my opinion, it actually works to its advantage. I think the writing is well done, but if I had one minor gripe, it'd be that I'd wanted to see a better ending, such as how they got out of that large forest. Overall though, great episode. Number 2, Shanghai. For a long time, this was my undisputed favorite SpongeBob episode. This episode had SpongeBob, Patrick, and Flying Dutchman at their most comedically foolish. Even Squidward, who was there for a not so long time, was pretty funny. As much as I generally hate the episodes that involve mindlessly torturing Squidward, I will say it was pretty funny to see the Flying Dutchman continuously torch Squidward. I enjoy the antics of SpongeBob and Patrick and seeing them heckle the Flying Dutchman. This is one of those episodes that showcase just how funny Patrick and SpongeBob being dumb can be when the writing is really good and effort is being put into the installment. Number 1, last but not least, SpongeBob meets the Strangler. This episode is prime SpongeBob for me. There are no dull moments in it. It is complete rapid-fire scenes and jokes almost every second. SpongeBob is at his best comedically here, and it even leaves room for my theory that SpongeBob knew it was the Strangler the entire time.
Thanks. Don't mention it, Strangler. I mean bodyguard.
In this episode, SpongeBob is picking up trash as he notices a litterer. SpongeBob calls the police. Squidward alerts SpongeBob of who he is. While this is happening, the police are arresting him in a hilariously subtle yet over-the-top fashion. The police reassure SpongeBob that the Strangler won't get out, as the Strangler gets out right after they finish saying that sentence. SpongeBob looks to Mr. Krabs for protection. Mr. Krabs backs out. In a montage form, SpongeBob asks several people for protection. They all back out. He walks around scared and stopped at a bus stop. The Strangler, using a mustache for a disguise, offers protection. He tries to strangle SpongeBob, but realizes he needs to do it privately. So he tells SpongeBob to go to his house. SpongeBob decides to run a few errands first until they finally get to SpongeBob's house. But SpongeBob, in turn, does not have his key after all. So the Strangler gets frustrated and tells him to hop on his shoulders so that he can go in through the window. SpongeBob, having spiky cleats on, jumps and gouges the Strangler's eyes out. Afterwards, SpongeBob gets the key under the mat. They open the door and everyone holds a surprise party for SpongeBob. Strangler goes to sit down while everyone parties. After everyone leaves, they come back to throw another party for him. Strangler goes to sit back down in the most hilariously frustrated fashion. After everyone leaves again, Patrick is back in the house. Strangler, unsurprisingly yet hilariously and unpredictably, convinces Patrick that he is the Strangler. When Strangler confesses to SpongeBob that he is the Strangler, he accidentally says the word party. And that's when everyone congregates at SpongeBob's house and tries to throw another party. By this point, the tattletale Strangler had had enough, so he decides to run away from SpongeBob after being driven nuts. SpongeBob follows him all the way until he lands in prison. He brings the Strangler to tears. Strangler is glad he's gone from SpongeBob until Patrick appears as his cellmate as a twist ending. Overall, this episode is spectacular in every aspect, from the writing of the jokes to the delivery of each punchline. This episode does not miss a beat. If ever there was a perfect SpongeBob episode, this is probably the first one that I would pick. Holy scallops. When rewatching SpongeBob episodes, I think this is probably the one that made me laugh the most. So that's going to conclude this video, everybody. If you liked my channel and you want to support, you may absolutely do so by purchasing a toy from my Mercari store. Link will be in the description below. Thank you and subscribe.